have it and call a special session. If you not, what is your, not necessarily opinion on what's going on, but your opinion of what that would lead to in terms of the next session?
Yeah.
Or whatever?
Well, it's a great question. I know of 2 Republicans in the state that called for a special session last week, and there's a lot of folks, including some of this room, who vigorously disagreed with me on that and called me on it. Let me explain. It's hard to explain reasoning in a tweet, so let me explain it. 2 reasons primarily. Number 1 is we still don't know exactly what happened, what went right, what went wrong in Uvalde. Clearly nothing went right and a lot went wrong. We're still trying to investigate, figure out exactly what happened with the police response, with the kids' social media, with whether there were red flags or not, with everything, how he bought the guns, how he bought so much ammo, was there a background check before, all that stuff. And we're going to figure out exactly what happened. But one thing I do know is that school was not secure. And in 2019, I helped write the bill, Senate Bill 11, that required our schools all across the state to enact certain security measures in response to what happened in Santa Fe. And we put serious teeth in that bill for school districts that failed not to. It's my belief right now that Uvalde completely failed to implement state law. And I want to make sure that when we go into the next school year in the fall, that the legislature has put more teeth into it, including possibly the loss of funding for a school district, if they just stick their heads in the sand and say we're not going to enforce state law with respect to school resource officers and locks on doors and fortifying our schools, making them safe.
So based on that bill, what is the penalty right now?
What the legislature did, and we do it so often, and frankly it bothers the crap out of me, but it is what it is. We give the Texas Education Agency, the Commissioner of Education, the authority to enforce the rules. And I believe that it's the legislature's responsibility to enforce the rules. And when we see a system, whether it's the justice system or school security, that's broken, we as the legislature, your representatives, it's our obligation, it's our job, it's what you've elected us to do, to go in and either rewrite the law or fix the law, clarify the law, to make sure the law is followed. Which brings me to my second point. I am increasingly concerned in this state about the growth of executive authority at the expense of the legislature. We talked about this a lot during COVID. During COVID, and look, there was a lot of unknown during COVID, and I think that our governor, when you compare him to the 49 governors across the state, I'd rather have Greg Abbott. He'd be in my top 3 for sure. I think he did a really, really good job. I wouldn't rather be in Texas than anywhere else right now. Put all the COVID decisions aside, 39 executive orders. The legislature was not in session at the time, and all of these orders restricting your rights and your liberties and your business and your family and your churches, what you could wear, what you couldn't wear, all of this was being done by one person. And when you start talking about the Uvalde shooting, no governor in America has had a more difficult tenure than Greg Abbott. You look at what he's dealt with. The school shootings, the winter storm, COVID. You look at a lot of what the wildfires, the hurricanes. He's dealt with a lot. But I think that the legislature's role, I hope you agree with me, the legislature's role is to govern and to have a voice. I pray to God that he crushes Beto O'Rourke in November. I think that he will, and with our help, we will ensure that happens. But if there is ever, guys, listen, we got to be concerned about this. If there is ever a Democrat governor in Texas in our lifetime, a progressive radical, if Governor, Beto or Castro were to get elected in Texas, we have set the precedent as Republicans to ignore the legislature and to give our governor all of this authority to enact laws via executive orders. And I think we should be concerned about that precedent, which is the second reason that I thought that this summer, before the school year starts, the legislature should be back in session. On the drag show in Dallas, I've actually passed the bill last session, which makes that illegal. It makes it illegal for anyone under the age of 21 to enter an SOB, not a son of a bitch, a sexually oriented business. What we don't know about that bar is whether that's classified as a sexually oriented business. And so what we want to make sure is we tighten that law to make sure that if you're doing sexually oriented activities, which is drag queen stripping and having kids put dollars in his or her, I don't even know what you call it, his thong, that's sexually oriented activity. It ought to be a criminal act. And so we're going to take that bill and expand it next session.
Is that needed?
Yeah, I wish Brian would have called me before he filed the bill, because what he proposed to do is already actually illegal under Texas law, but his point is well taken, and we're going to work together to strengthen this law next session. So you can't take a 20-year-old into a strip club right now in Texas, or a 2-year-old. Yeah.
Yeah, with regard to all the precedents set by, COVID restrictions, is there an effort either through legislatively or maybe in the constitutional amendment to kind of restrict the definition of emergencies in the future to require legislative intervention?
We tried last session and we were unsuccessful. Y'all remember House Bill 3 from last session, Maggie. We worked on this. And what it would have required is, we want our governor to have executive authority to respond in cases of emergency and to devote funding to emergency resources and whatnot, like a hurricane. But what the bill would have done is that, limited that authority for 30 days. And if you wanted to go beyond 30 days, the legislature would immediately be called back into session. We were not able to pass the bill that I helped write. We couldn't get it done. But we'll try again next session.